So, hello. I'm going to hold a lecture on the importance of translating the names of characters and of places in Old Norse myths in order to understand the coded messages that are, in fact, present in these myths. Messages concerning philosophy, metaphysics, and spirituality. Now, we know, at least scholars know, that the myths were told in a poetical style that was allusive and metaphorical. They were like parables. They were like riddles that had to be solved, deciphered, so to speak. This was how the Old Norse people experienced them, as intellectual challenges that they had to solve. And yet, most mainstream publications about these myths leave us only with the impression that the myths were simple and straightforward A to B stories, like fairy tales. And I was actually taught in school that they were meant to entertain children and to explain natural phenomena that people at the time were too ignorant to understand. So, well, one of the reasons why we are left with this impression is because the names of characters and the names of places in the myths are hardly ever translated. You see, today we tend to relate to names as just sounds used to identify someone or somewhere. But in the Old Norse myths, as well as in probably many other mythologies, but I'll stick to my subject, the names carry a meaning, and these meanings are the keys to understanding the underlying messages that are hidden within the parables that are the myths. So these meanings were known to the Old Norse people. So if we want to get even close to what they perceived when they heard a myth being told, we have to try and understand these names. We have to try to make translations. And we have to keep in mind the fact that the Old Norse peoples themselves perceived the myths as riddles that hid knowledge of the nature of the universe and our place in it. So I'm going to give an example of how a translation may provide new insight into the minds of people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. So let's talk about creation. Now, the creation of the universe is a topic in several Old Norse poems on mythology, and I have chosen stanza 3 from the Edda poem Völuspá. Now, in Völuspá, this witch is telling the tale of how the universe was created. And the first line in this stanza is Ar var alda. Now, Ar means in the beginning, Var means was, and Alda, what does that mean? That's the noun. Now, I have never seen any translation of the Poetic Edda that actually translates Alda as a noun. Now, you will read in the beginning of time, or in the beginning of the ages, or in the olden days even. And this doesn't really make sense grammatically, because this is supposed to be a noun. So if you look up in an Old Norse dictionary, I'm sure you have that laying around, then Alda, as a singular feminine noun, it means a big wave. Now, maybe this is not being translated because it hasn't made sense to those who have tried to translate these poems. Or maybe they just follow the tradition that is to say that this was in the beginning of the time. So, yeah, maybe, whatever. But Alda actually means a big wave. And it makes sense because waves, rivers and streams were a very important part of the primeval forces in the cosmos. And actually, Vikings were a seafaring folk, and they had many different words for waves. And Alda is a big wave. It's like a tsunami. And then you have these other kinds of waves. And one of these other kinds of waves are the little waves, under. And later on in the poem, it is telling us that in the beginning was the big wave, but there were no little waves. Nesvalar under. Nor cool waves. That under means the little wave. So there was a big wave, but not any small waves. Just a big singular one. Okay, what are waves and what are streams and what are rivers? Well, if you read them as they should be read, as poetical metaphors, then waves, rivers and streams are movement. vibration, so to speak. And that brings us on to the next line in this stanza, which is Der Ymer bygdi. Now, der means that place where, and it's referring to the big wave, so it's happening inside the big wave. Ymer, inside the big wave, is building. Now, what is Ymer? Of course, we can look to what Snorri Sturluson says about this. He wrote this in the 13th century, and he said that Ymer was a giant, the first giant, and this giant was created by hot and cold streams, again, at the beginning of the universe, and he was nurtured by the 4 streams, again, of milk coming out of the great cow, the goddess, active force in the universe. And he also tells us that this same cow, she brings forth Odin and his 2 brothers. So these represent spirit, conscious intelligence, and poetry. And these divine beings, entities, they killed Ymir, the giant, and cut him into little pieces. And from his limbs they shaped the universe. Now, what is Ymir? What does it mean? Well, you don't have to look further than an Old Norse dictionary again to see that Ymir is derived from Ymir, singular masculine noun, and it means a big sound. Right, so inside the big wave, a big sound was building. And it's getting interesting, you know, it gets tempting to say that, did these people know about sound waves? Maybe they did. So, and it makes also sense out of the story of these 3 gods killing and cutting this giant into pieces, because if a sound, a big primeval first singular sound of the universe is cut into pieces, it means that it is divided into countless tunes, an orchestra that makes up the universe. And I have to finish here, but I just want to point out that this is not a fairy tale. This is philosophy. This is metaphysics. So, yeah, I don't know much about physics, but I think maybe they're onto something very close to the truth. Alright, time is running out, so if you like this lecture and you want me to continue to do more, then please rate it, comment it, send me a message, subscribe, whatever. Just let me know and ask me questions if you like. I might find time to answer them. So, okay, that's it for today. Thank you.